right, tomorrow we have a new featured location coming to Marvel Snap, and this happens every week where we get a new location, and the location is going to be Altar of Death. When you play a card here, destroy it to get +2 energy next turn. Now, this is something that happens every week here in Marvel Snap. For me, it is Tuesday evening. Probably for most people in the world, it's on Wednesday. We get a new featured location. So it's a brand new location that appears 40% more frequently for the next 48 hours. Now, this location is kind of a invasive one. Like, it's not a passive location. It's actually kind of have to have a deck that complements this location. Now, because it appears 40% more frequently, you don't want to have a deck that just is good only if that location shows up, but you need to have a deck that actually wins even if the location does not show up. Now, this is different than the hot locations, which happen for me Saturday evening, for most people all day Sunday, and that is for 24 hours, and that is 60% more frequently, and that is typically an older location that we've had in the past. So I've got 5 decks that I want to try when this location goes live tomorrow. But I do want to talk about just some kind of cards and interactions that are probably going to be very good. I'm sure there's some that I missed out. And be sure to put in the comments any kind of card that you would want to try out. But again, when you play a card here, destroy it to get +2 energy next turn. First card that came to mind is Jubilee. If you build a deck around Jubilee, you can place Jubilee into that location, get +2 energy, and then whatever card is going to be there. And then also, this will not be cluttering up the lane because she will be blown up, and then her card that she pulls out of the deck will remain. So that's a card that I thought was interesting. Then there's Bucky. Bucky's an interesting card because he's commonly played with destroyed packages, and we're going to talk about a well-known archetype Deathwave deck that does very well. In fact, last season, it was one of the decks that I used to climb to Infinite. But Bucky right here will drop Winter Soldier behind him as soon as he explodes, so you can play him in that location and leave behind the Winter Soldier. When this is destroyed, create a Winter Soldier in its place, and I think that will be a very popular option when you can do the whole death, the whole Deadpool, the whole Venom, the whole thing. And I've got a deck that the one that I'm the most excited about. We'll talk about that. So things that get a benefit from exploding. And I think other cards that might work on this would be like Brood or Mr. Sinister would be a card that has kind of like an effect where something is left behind and the initial card is gone. Of course, if things are going to be dying all the time, this leads me to the idea of Death is going to be a very popular card during this time. It costs 1 less for each card destroyed this game. And so again, we're going to talk about the Deathwave event. Then other things is moving into the location. So that I brought up Vision, but it doesn't have to be Vision. I suppose that this could be a lot of other types of cards. It could be Vision, Captain Marvel, or Doom are all very common cards that accomplish this when you're locked out of a lane, being able to move into it with a card that has some sort of ability to cheat into the lane is going to be popular during this location. So I think Vision is going to be, now there's always the option of just not dealing with the location or locking people out of the location. And I think there's several cards that do that. You got Rhino, Scarlet Witch, Magic. My personal favorite is Storm. And I also like Magic. I'm not so much a fan of Rhino, and then Scarlet Witch is good, but it sometimes feels very random. But if you just don't want to deal with the location, you have option of Storm, and then also Armor will shut down the location. And the other thing that I want to be, because there's a lot of extra energy floating around, I feel like we're going to see a lot more of Galactus play. So there's 5 decks that I want to try out when this this location goes live. 3 of them are existing and known decks in Marvel Snap that already do very well. What I mean by this is that these are decks that are proven to work already in climbs to Infinite and so on and so on. I've used them last season, or I've been using them recently. And these decks also seem like they would also work in this location. So The advantage of using an existing archetype or an existing deck is that, when the location doesn't show up, you still have a strong deck to play. So the first one that we're going to go over is Death Wave. And this was a very, very popular, this is not a new deck. And there's a lot of things that work in this existing deck list. And then there's a lot of opportunities to also change out items in this deck if you want to do it differently. Hood. You can drop Hood into that location. He'll explode. And then you'll be left with the demon. Squirrel Girl would allow you to cheat 1 power into that location. You can play Squirrel Girl in a different location, and then you'll get 1 power. Yondu might replace, but you could put Yondu in that location. Not only will Yondu get destroyed, but then also Yondu, this is kind of a weird card. It says remove the top card of your opponent deck. It actually destroys that card, and it counts towards death. Then we've got right here Bucky, which we talked about. Put it in that location, it explodes, and you're going to be left with Winter Soldier. So basically, you're only spending 2 mana. You're going to be able to cheat into that location and have a 6 power card. Carnage. So the reason why Carnage, I think, is an important card is that if that location shows up, then you can only typically play in the other 2 locations, and they tend to get clogged when that happens. Whenever there's one of the 3 locations is completely shut down, typically you can run out of space. Carnage fixes that problem and also destroys things in your deck, fueling again death. And then we've got Killmonger, reveal, destroy all 1-cost cards. I have mixed feelings about using that in this location, but this was a card that works. But we'll see. Now we'll talk about Wave in here in a second. Deathlock frees up space. Arrow, just a good card, and Leader, just a good card. And the idea with this deck is to play Wave on turn 5. And then that will typically lock your opponent out, and they'll only be able to play 1 card. But if you played Wave on turn 5, you will have not spent 2 mana, meaning your She-Hulk will cost 2. And then you're free to play Leader or Arrow, which are just good cards. And then typically at that point, Death will have her cost reduced. And you're typically put in a situation where on turn 6, your opponent can play 1 card, and you can play 3 cards. The next deck that I wanted to play is called Surf Sarah Control. And there's a couple things in this deck that work with this particular location. One, Nova, you can just drop into that location on turn 6, let's say, and give 1 power to the rest of your cards. Very easy. Forge, you can place Forge in that location. He usually is just clogging up, taking space anyways, and give +2 power. Typically, you want this +2 power to go to Brood. Brood, right there, can go into that location and give 2 bodies there. The primary Brood will explode, but the other 2 will remain, and that is fantastic. Goose will lock up the other locations. Think about it. If people are going to be playing expensive cards, there's a lot of free energy and power going to be going around, and Goose is probably going to be very useful at this time in keeping people from paying their cost 4, 5, and 6. And there's only 1 card in this deck that conflicts with that, and that is Sarah. Then Storm. Storm can just destroy the location and foil your opponent's plans for trying to manipulate that. And then we've got Cosmo, which is just a great card that disrupts on reveal abilities. It seems like most of the good cards in the game are on reveals. Juggernaut is double-edged sword, and the reason why Juggernaut is in here is because he synergizes with Silver Surfer, and we'll come back to Silver Surfer at the end. But typically you play Storm on turn 3, follow up with Juggernaut on turn 4, and it kicks out. Now the problem with Juggernaut is sometimes it's a little bit awkward, and it can be a dead card. Let's say you play Storm turn 3, and then you draw into Juggernaut later. You don't want to push your opponents into the lane that you already are winning and have locked down. Polaris can suck cards into locations, and that's kind of an interesting thing. This actually is a very disruptive card, but the main reason why you run Polaris is that she's a 3-cost card with 5 power, and she has a nice, cute interaction. And then Maximus is just a quality card, high power. Your opponent draws 2 cards. A lot of people ask, is this a big downside? I don't know. I feel like I've played a lot of Maximus, and I don't know if I've lost because my opponent drawing 2 cards, but it doesn't feel like I have. I feel like having Maximus and being ahead and having initiative and then being able to play Cosmo before my opponent does to disrupt their plans seems important. And then, of course, Sarah is cost reduction, and then Silver Surfer is fueling all of this other goodness and giving all these other cards. So that is a deck I want to try. This is a deck that works. This is a deck that I used to climb to infinite last season. So this one I want to try. Might have to make some small modifications when the location goes hot. We will have to see. The next one I want to do is called Toxic Zabu. This is a Zabu deck that basically locks down locations and has a way of cheating locations. But basically, there is Korg, and Korg is synergizing with Darkhawk to give him extra power by pushing rocks into your opponent's deck, which also could be disruptive. Black Widow does something similar. She puts Widow's Bite into their hand so they're not drawing a card. When they don't draw a card, that means there's more cards in their deck, also giving extra power to Darkhawk. Scorpion is just a good card. I suppose you could throw him into that location and just let him die, and his on-reveal effect will just go off with -1 power. And then there is Storm, which can be used to lock down that lane or get rid of that lane if you don't want to deal with it. Zabu, with cost reduction to your 4-cost cards. A win condition right here with lots of power. And then this is where this deck is super annoying. Is typically what happens is I play Storm on turn 3, something good. Maybe Rock Slide, Zabu, or Darkhawk behind Storm to win that location, specifically Zabu. And then on turn 5, place Spider-Man into one lane and copy Spider-Man with Absorbing Man, effectively locking them out of all 3 locations. Good card, which synergizes with Darkhawk. Good card that just gives you a card in your opponent's hand. Just a great card. Also 6 power. Dr. Doom to get the bots into the location that are locked out of. And then America Chavez makes the deck more consistent and also gives power to that lane. Now, that card may not be optimal with this location, but I know that this deck list works. So these 3 decks that I just showcased here are known decks that work right now, whether or not the location shows up or not. Now, I have 2 other decks that I want to talk that are more specific to the location, and I want to try them out. This one is based off of Destruction and maybe even Venom, getting a very strong Venom and fueling that into a Taskmaster, and then even an Arno and Zola. Again, Hood works well in that location. Then you'll have the Demon in your hand. Deathpool will just get bigger and bigger and bigger, blowing him up every turn. I think this is going to be one of the more fun cards with this location, just throwing him in there, exploding, getting 2 energy, get 2 energy all over the time. Nova, we talked about. Bucky, we've talked about. Carnage, we talked about. Venom will consolidate space and make one big creature that you could do one of 2 things to, which is kind of fun. You can either use Taskmaster to clone him, or you can use Arnim Zola to push them into 2 other lanes. Of course, one of the lanes being locked out, which is fantastic. Then we've also got Deathlock, Destroy, and then we've got Wave, which also works with She-Hulk and Death, like the Death Wave deck. So lots of interesting things there. Now, the last one right here is a little bit more generic. This one right here is based around being able to get power into that location and being disruptive while at the same time playing good cards. Iceman can just be sacrificed, and Iceman is one of the most notoriously good 1-drop cards, along with Scorpion. We've talked about Armor being able to shut that location down. Mr. Fantastic is just a good card and can push 2 power into that location if you're not able to get into it. Storm can destroy the location. Maximus is a good card just to get the 7 power. Shuri, so much fun. Shuri and Vision are like one of my favorite cards to play together, to push all that power to Vision, to make him 14 power and then be able to push him wherever you want to go is a lot of fun with Shuri. Jessica Jones, typically you can play Jessica Jones after you play Storm, and that'll give you an 8 total power, and then you'll be set with getting that location locked up. Arrow, just a good card. Leader, just a good card. And then Doom, also an amazing card, which push power into your location. What kind of strategies are you going to try when this location comes out? I don't know which one's going to work best, but there's a lot that I want to try. Looking forward to playing the Altar of Death when it goes live sometime tomorrow. All right, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section. As always, thanks for watching and keep on gaming. Bye for now.